Welcome everyone, today we have a new guide for Diablo 4. Now before we do anything, let's have a look at this particular playthrough, and this will be going for the World Tier 2 into World Tier 3. And this is for the Barbarian. So what I want to show you guys is I have made a triple shot build with Barbarians, with Hammer of Ancient and also the Summons of Ancient. And you can see that we deal a lot of damage against elites. And we have some really good rotations, really good burst damage against all the monsters in this dungeon. So what I want to make and show you guys is, not only do we have a lot of damage with our ultimate, we can also do damage without the ultimate as well. So in this video, I'll show you guys the entire guide of how to deal with the dungeons with a build that does not require any special legendaries. All the legendaries effect on this build is craftable, and you can be getting those from the dungeons. You can see that we can stun the enemy a lot, we can deal a lot of damage, and also what I want to show you guys is we can deal a lot of burst damage against the boss. So this is against the first section of the boss of the dungeon. And you guys can see that within my first rotation of the spells, I was able to kill one of the boss. And this makes the boss fight super easy on the first zone. Actually, I almost killed the first boss. So yes, I was able to kill the first one. Notice that there's 3 bosses left, and this allows me to clear this one super nicely. And finally, in case you guys are wondering, we do very decent damage against the final boss as well. We have some really good stuns, really good mobility, and also really good sustain. We also heal ourselves with a lot of shot. So this build is quite interesting, I'll show you guys over here. So we can stun the boss a lot, and while we're stunning the boss, we'll deal a lot of damage. So yes, I was able to clear the World Tier Difficulty 2 Capstone dungeon at level 45 with this build on my Barbarian. And this is why I want to show you guys this build, and also, make the build for you guys to try it out for the Barbarians. And of course guys, at the end of the video, I'll have the entire clip available for you guys to have a look how I play against the elites, against the boss, and also against the final boss. Now before we jump into the build, I have some really good news guys. I'll be working with Mobalytics and also making additional guide and also cheat sheet for the Diablo 4 builds and also guides. So we'll be making lots of cheat sheets for the guides and also builds for Diablo 4 for different classes and also different characters, and this will be a mobile friendly version. Now this build is a transition from the similar build from the Leveling Barbarian. You can see that the Leveling Barbarian also uses triple shots and also ground stun. And what I do is I'll have the link to this build available to you guys, and once the build for my build is ready, I'll have that updated for you guys. Now this video will be broken down into 3 parts, because the biggest highlight for this build is that you do not require any special legendary that cannot be found from the dungeons and also the Codex. So I want to show you guys what are the dungeons you should be going for, what are the Codex you should be going for to be crafting a few of your legendaries, and those are very simple, very straightforward. The second part of the video will go through the skill trees of my build at level 45 with only 1 skill point from each of the regions. And finally, I'll go through the skill rotations, the combination against the elites, against the bosses, and also a few tips to stay alive in the dungeon. So coming over to the first part of the video, what I do is I'll highlight the most essential legendary aspects and also the golden legendary aspects you can be looking for if you do get that one. So right away guys, you can see that I'm using the Hammer of Ancient, and this is level 7 because of the gloves. And what I do have is, I have crafted this one ages ago when I was level 23 onto this ring. And you can see this is a basic crafting from one of the legendary Codex dungeons. Now in case you guys are wondering, where can you get different Codex for the Barbarian, we do have a written guide over here, and what we'll do is, I'll show you guys you can get the Helmet of Ancient, which is on the 2nd act, and this is from the Sunken Ruins. So what you do want to do is, I'll have the links available for you guys on this particular guide, and there is only one update on this guide I haven't got time to correct. Because before the launch of the game, we didn't know the dungeons for those availability of the Codex. And after the launch of the game, some of the legendary aspects I thought that would be available from the campaign was actually from the dungeons. But for the Barbarians, this won't be affecting it that much. So one of the Codex you'll be looking for is on Act 2 with Sunken Ruins. And this allows your Helmet of Ancient to deal AoE damage. Now the other Codex you can be looking for is coming from the Dark Raven, and this allows your basic spell to grant 20% damage reduction. And finally, if you come over to Capstone, so this is one of the legendary Codex we'll be going for, and this is from Zero Code Caverns, and those will be very important. Now if you do happen to have gotten the legendary Codex from Howl of the Damned, this is also really good for defensive purpose. So I figured this will be much easier if I show you guys my gears, of course. Now I also recommend having a look at that previous video because this is how I got over 1 million gold and also tons of mats for crafting in this build. So the gears I crafted was on the ring for the Helm of Ancient. And after that, what I also crafted was for the shots to provide us with more, with more fury. And because I'll be using triple shots, this is really good as we fight and so we use more fury, because I'll be using the keystone to increase the fury cost and also damage. Now in terms of the offensive two-handed codex, I gotten this weapon randomly, this legendary weapon, and this weapon is not crafted. So I have gotten the when you stand still you do 30%, up to 30% more damage. And this is of course flexible. You don't have to have this one, but it is nice. Any of the correct offensive codex will do over here. And similarly, I also got this legendary codex randomly. You don't have to have the increased critical chance, but the increase of crowd control duration is actually even better. So I'm actually keeping this one for the increased crowd control duration because we'll be stunning a lot with our passives. And for the amulet, I also have this one crafted. Now for this particular legendary aspects, you can also be crafting this one from the dungeons. And I do believe if you come over to the, I think this is the second act, if you come over to second act and also clear Old Stone, you can be getting legendary codex as well. So as we keep going, you can see on the weapons, everything is pretty straightforward. I just happen to have this, increased stun damage on the one-hand weapon, and this is not a major factor of course. And over here you can see that I have a bit of core skill that increase attack speed. Again, this is just a random job, you don't need to have those. Now I mentioned earlier about getting the damage reduction with basic spells, and you can see this one is on the chest. You can be crafting this one from the legendary codex. And over here you can see on the helmet, I also have more damage reduction, and this is against bleeding enemies. We do have a spell, and this is going to be Launch Strike that can make enemy bleed, and this will also provide us with a lot of slow. And finally, the boost is just a random legendary. I don't even need the legendary effect. I only use the boost for the movement speed. Now in terms of the affix choices, we're going with damage against stun enemies, we're going with any of the strength, we're going with vulnerability damage, core skill damage, and also damage against slow enemies. We also want a little bit of the additional damage if we can, but it is not needed. For the gloves, we do want the +2 Helmet of Ancient, and this is the major factor. Now before we come over to the skill tree, I'll quickly show you guys my renown. I have only gotten 1 skill point from each of the zones, so that means I got 5 extra skill points from the renowns. So if I come over to the skill points, it is quite straightforward, but it is quite nice, and I'll show you guys a variety if you do find yourself to be taking lots of damage. So the first thing is we'll be going with Launch Strike, and we'll be upgrading this one to allow us to bleed enemies, and this is really good defensively and also offensively. We'll be going with 5 points into Helm of Ancient, and I'm using this one simply because I do have a nice two-handed mace, and two-handed mace is over here, and this one is 799 damage per second. Now if I do get, which I eventually did get, a nice two-handed sword, if I get a nice two-handed sword, you can use similar build for the rend build as well for this build. So over here I went with 5 points into Helm of Ancient and also the upgrade, which allows us to deal more damage with more fury. Now you can see over here I went with 3 points into Pressure Point and also 3 points into Endless Fury, which allows us to provide vulnerability and also provide us with more fury. Now if we come over to the defensive section, I have only allocated 1 point into each of the shouts. Yes, I can be going to more points of the shouts, but I'm a little short on the points. So I'll be going with 1 point into Rally Cry, which provide me with additional fury gain and also resource gain. I'll be going with 1 point into Challenger Shout, which provide me with additional fury gain when I take damage. And finally, for my third shout, I'll be going with War Cry, which allows me to have a Berserk duration and also have Fortified, and also provide me with a Fortify, which is really good defensively. Now if you do find yourself to be taking a lot of damage and you want to be taking away one of the shouts, you can take away War Cry and go with Iron Skin, and this can also be more defensive with a barrier as well. Now because I'm running triple shouts, I have gotten all the points into the shouts, so the shouts that provides increased duration, the shout that heals us, and also the shout that reduces the enemy's damage, which will be really good. Now as we come over to the Weapon Mastery section, we'll be going with 1 point into Hamstring, and this allows us to use the Launch Strike bleeding damage to be slowing enemies, and one can be benefiting from increased damage from slow enemies. Over here we go with 3 points into Pit Fighter, which is really good. We're also going to 3 points into No Mercy, which allows us to have a critical chance against slowed enemies, and also stun enemies. Now finally, for the ultimate, I really recommend going with Helm of Vengeance before we have enough stats for the Wrath of Berserker. And the Helm of Vengeance is a really good spell with 50-second cooldown, tremendous damage, and also this allows us to have a burst rotation every 50 seconds. Now because I'm using a Barbarian, it is a two-handed mace. Because I'm using a two-handed mace, I'll be going with 1 point into Wall Up and also 3 points into Concussion, which allows me to stun the monsters very frequently. And this is a good combination, because if we come over here, if we stun the monsters, we also have increased 68% stun duration. So what that means is I'll be stunning enemies for days, and when they are stunned, they actually take additional damage from spells and also casting. Now finally, as for the Keystone passive, we could be going with Unbridled Rage, which allows us to deal 135% more damage, but consumes 100% more Fury. So yes, the Fury cost for me is really high, it's 70%, or 70. Well, 70%, it's 100, right? And in this sense, I can only cast this once, but as you're gonna see in the replay, we actually have some really good Fury gain. And this is because my shots will be providing me with Fury, and also we have the passive that provides us with more Fury as we use a two-hand weapon. And this is quite important. Now before we jump to the next part, I also want to show you this weapon. This weapon has 7.5% increased stun damage plus 30% increased stun damage. So yes, this is the stun damage weapon. And now let's jump over to the replay for the rotations. Now because we're running triple shots, and one of the middle shot, the challenging shot, is gonna be a taunting shot that reduces damage taken, I'll be using my first shot and also the third shot, the rally cry and also the war cry, as the offensive shots. And when I can, I will be casting my ultimate, and this allows me to burst down any of the elites in one go. Now this is very straightforward. If you have the cooldowns, you can kill any of the elites and you don't take much damage at all. And here you get to see this again. So basically we have a lot of passive stuns, we have lots of burst damage. And you can be patient. If you're patient enough, you can just wait for your cooldowns and kill everything like this. But of course guys, sometimes you don't have the cooldowns. So here you can see against one of the elites, we don't have the cooldowns. So just use your taunt shot and stack a lot of the defensive capacities. And then while you still have your taunt shot, burst the enemies stun if they're stunned. Once enemies are stunned, you'll do more damage. Now in terms of the boss mechanics and against the horde of enemies, what you want to do is, you want to burst down one of the single elites and then go for the rest of them. And do keep in mind, we are very cooldown dependent. So if you don't kill one of them at the start, try to run around, try to collect the potions, try to stay alive for the next cooldown. So I fast forward a little bit, I'll show you guys once we get to the next cooldown, we summon the ancients and we pretty much mop the floor with them. So it takes 2 cooldowns to kill those monsters, and if you play patiently, you'll be very strong. Now one thing I do want to highlight is your potion control. As you play the dungeons, especially the Capstone dungeons, if you do not control your potion correctly, like over here, I actually just got careless. I popped triple potions and all of a sudden I'm out of potions. And I actually died to normal monsters. So yeah, do be aware guys, you do have a limited number of revives. I do believe you have 13 revives, and the first time I got careless, and the second time I got careless again, and I actually wasted my potions. So yes, I wasn't having trouble against the boss or the elites, but I was having trouble against normal monsters, because I got a little careless. Now finally, coming over to the boss. It is quite straightforward. I have the entire replay for you guys to see against the boss. This is the first time I fought the boss, and I was lucky to go through on the first go. So we do have a bar over here, I'll show you guys. Notice that there is a little bar under the boss. And once this bar actually fills up, what that means is you can be stunning the boss for a few seconds. And this is quite important, because a lot of my spells will actually deal increased damage when the boss is stunned. So what you can do is, you can try to time your rotations to notice now the boss is stunned, right? You can try to time your rotations and also active spells when the boss is stunned. I wasn't able to do this the first time, so I wasn't able to do a lot of damage. So what I want to show you guys is, I think the second time, on the second time I was able to time this one with my Core of Engines, and this allows me to deal way more damage because the boss is stunned while the engines are up. So as you play the game, you start to notice the stun duration, and this allows you to do more damage. Now for the rest of the fight, it is pretty straightforward. I did have a really close call because I started to get careless and I thought I already won the game. And here you can see I was out of potions and I was just lucky enough to take down the boss on the first go. Now hopefully you guys enjoyed this video and it helps you to clear the Capstone dungeons. And I'll be making more guide on the next part to clear the tier 3 Capstone dungeons for tier 4. So let me know what you guys think about this build, and now let's come over to the replays.
potions.
If you guys haven't subscribed, it is a really good time to do so, because I'll be covering tons of Diablo 4 related topics and also videos and also guides. We'll be looking to the top meta builds, non-meta builds, leveling up, and also Paragon tricks. We're also looking to the latest events and also official updates, and also changes to different characters and also different builds in the game. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and also turn the notification on, because a lot of you who are watching the videos have not subscribed. You can see 80% of the viewers who are watching our videos have not subscribed, so make sure you subscribe to stay tuned for the latest update for Diablo 4.